Hello, everyone. How's everyone doing today? Thank you once again for joining us for The Orbit. I'm Azrael as it gets, joined once again by my co-hosts and fellow Eternal Orbit teammates, Mr. Exiles Rhythm.
Yep.
And Mr. Rude Clouds.
What's up?
Hey, guys. How you doing today?
Doing good, Az. How'd your Wednesday go?
Good. I'm so sorry for the technical snafu there. I'm a human being.
I'm leaving. I'd like to talk to a manager.
Son of a... There's nobody driving this clown car, guys.
Yeah. It's really just a leap of faith.
Every time we get started up.
And I'm doing well over here. You get in there.
I was going to say, as long as my compensation for doing the show goes through, I don't care if there's a manager or not.
I promise the checks will clear.
Let's go.
So, guys, how have you been? How's your week been? X, why don't we start with you, my friend? I hear you've been kicking butt on the ladder. What's up with you in Hearthstone this week?
Yeah, so honestly, it started at the first of the month. Anybody who's been watching my stream knows I got pretty sick at the con that I went to a couple weekends ago, and so I didn't stream on the first or the second. And without the extra distraction of you, chat, yeah, I'm blaming you. I just hit Legend super quick. I broke into Legend at like rank 40 or something, and then I've been playing top 100 Legend ever since. I peaked at 26. I think right now I'm sitting at like 105, but
that's incredible. Something like 10 days now of top 100 Legend.
Yeah.
That's incredible. What's it been like? Is it more stressful than the normal ladder, or are you just like immune to that right now?
No, honestly, it's a lot less stressful than normal ladder because I know that my opponent's always going to make a play that makes sense, which makes my plays better because oftentimes my plays are good because I have the proper read.
Right.
But when they're accidentally bluffing at something that they don't have, my life gets a lot harder. So I'd say it's a bit more comfortable here.
Right. Have you been seeing the same decks that like some of us see at like rank 5 to 1 or lower ranks?
I learned so many new decks anytime I hang out with my friends, like who are still like rank 2 to 5 or.
Right.
There's a Warlock list that runs Soul Warden that I learned about. There's like every time I watch your stream, Az, there's like 15 new decks I'd never heard of. I'm like, oh Jesus,
Are you seeing like super ultra meta decks? Or are you seeing like a lot of like crazy twisted or like spin-off decks from what we see on the lower ranks?
So where do people in the lower ranks get their decks? They get their deck lists from HS Replay. Why do people play? Why do those decks get so much play? Well, they see other people being successful with them. Where does all this come from? The top of the ladder. So people are innovating a lot at the top of the ladder, and you see a lot of really weird cards, but they make sense. And as soon as you see it, you're like, why didn't I think about putting Shield Breaker in Zoo?
Right.
And like, that's how these things evolve. And that's why Cheaty Ankle Biter is really starting to pick up steam because me, Sizoklo, and Papa Jason all believe in the gospel of Cheaty. So
right. And I guess final question on the picking your brain and what it's like to play among the big boys. Who have you played that people watching might be interested to hear about?
I mean, quite a few people off the top of my head. Senf Glass, I've played him probably a half a dozen times.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and he's probably the biggest one of note from this season. In past seasons, I've played names, but in the top 100 on any of the season, only Senf Glass is the household name, I guess.
Right.
You'd say.
Okay.
And we know you won, so that doesn't even have to be
asked. I'm 5-1 against him.
Yeah.
Oh man!
Why we signed him, folks?
That's
even lock versus mid range hunter. By the way, every single match.
Really? Good for you, getting it done with the even lock against a very, very strong deck. What about you, Eric? How's your climb been this week?
It's been nice. I actually have only had one night this week of actual climbing, but it was a successful night where we went from rank 4 to rank 2 with Q block while just messing around in chat and everything. So that was a fun stream because I don't know. sometimes you just when you aren't thinking about Hearthstone while you're streaming, you end up having the best results because games are just very fluid, and your mind just sort of makes these associations that you're not overthinking,
right?
In any other circumstance. So those are always really fun times. So I've been enjoying it. Q-Blox, it's been fun to see that it's just still so not only comfortable for me, but obviously so effective as well.
Still kicking it with Q-Block.
Oh, you better believe that I am a creature of habit.
Says the guy that plays Spell Hunters 70% of the time.
Yeah, wow. Really the pot calling the kettle
Q-Block. Right?
We're both terrible.
Yep.
2 for the price of 1.
That's right. But hey, we're on brand.
Exactly. And then that does naturally lead us back to you. What has your week been like?
Well, I've only played on ladder one day this month. That was yesterday. Was yesterday. Yeah. I was traveling and just busy and so I played very, very, very little ladder. And I'll be honest with you, I was a little burned out after last month's climb because that was a climb to the last, I made it 2 days before the reset. I made it to Legend, so I put a lot of time in. So I was like, I'm taking a couple days off. And it's like, now I'm going on vacation, and so I didn't play on ladder at all. I did play a little bit last night. I had some success with hybrid hunter. Got it to rank 3 2 stars, and then had a 67% win rate, and then fell down to rank 4 1 star in a matter of an hour and a half. And it was rough. It was rough. Yeah, I ran into a lot of difficult matchups. But yeah, I'm super. It just reminds me though, even playing decks that are new and putting my own little twist on decks, it just reminds me that I'm really ready for new stuff to be coming here pretty soon. Which, interestingly enough, speaking of new stuff, did you guys been watching these teaser videos? I know they released a 4th one today, and it hinted at there was going to be a 5th one. I'm guessing Friday. My hunch is that 5th one it'll be obviously Rafam, but it will also give us the reveal on the expansion. What do you guys think?
I'm going to be completely honest with you. I watched the first teaser video, and what I saw was a teaser to a teaser, and I was like, I'm not watching any of these. And so since then I haven't.
Fair enough.
And I would argue it's not essential viewing as much as I have been watching them and enjoying it. Because it's whatever, I'm just love to be teased apparently, but it's fun to it's fun to see the animations come through. It's fun to get these indications, so you can start thinking these outrageous things and being like, hey, this might happen because all of a sudden we're seeing all these people together. Mm-hmm. It's fun to play around like that, but I don't think you can get anything concrete from that.
How much
I agree. I think it's just I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I say it's just a bit more difficult for me. I know that you, at least Rude Clouds, have a background with World of Warcraft. I know nothing about the Hearthstone universe. So when I see the people sitting around the table and this fortune teller, who I'm told is from a different set, is saying, oh, there's friends, I'm like, I have friends?
You would watch us sitting around a table or a stream even.
Right. How much of a tease is it going to be, or a bait and switch is it going to be? Because I have a suspicion, and I think I've seen some of that floating around there, and some of the things I've glossed over. That there's a sense that they're just teasing some of the upcoming changes, and this isn't actually directly related to the expansion. I mean, it's kind of got to be, right? Because that would be the hugest slap in the face, April Fool's joke they could pull off, right?
Yeah.
April Fools, Baku and Gen are staying in standard.
Oh, good. The prayer's answered. It's funny you say that because it just seems strange. It seems strange to have this. I don't know. You look at the card back that they showed for or not the card back I should say, but the kind of preview purpley, violets, pink, whatever colors that people are saying, Violet Hold or something arcane, Kirin Tor. And then you have these 5 villains all together. It's interesting to try to make that connection. I know people said Villains of the Violet Hold could be a potential name for something. But it's kind of weird to think that these are all things I don't know. It'd be interesting to see those things come together. But like you said, this is now gone on for almost 2 weeks
Mhm.
of teasing. So like, if this is just like, hey, guess what? You can this is to prep up like arena rotation sets.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Like that is going to be, and here's another 2 weeks for the actual expansion teaser. Like that's, I think you just can't expect that at this point. So
oh man,
it's got to have some. It has to be linked intrinsically, but I don't think there's any way that someone's going to be able to nail it down 100% at this point.
Maybe all of these teasers is what Blizzard was talking about when they said more communication.
More communication. It'll just be all gibberish hidden behind a secret code.
Patch notes are like every 3 days, 10-second videos. Like, lowered the animation timer. 2 more days until you come back and hear about what we did to the rope.
Oh, you're killing me.
That's great.
Yeah. Do you have any little musings that are in your head as far as what the skull could potentially be leading up to, or you just have the same mind? It's gotta tie into the real rotation.
I'm really hoping that because the timing seems right? So they're doing them every 3 days for those little reveals. So following the pattern, the next thing should happen on Friday, which would be perfect timing for them to announce, hey, here it is. Here's a couple of cards that are coming out, doing their little teaser, like 5-7 cards they like to do. And then, Monday we'll have a stream about it or whatever. And they do that stream where they, go over like 10 cards and then they have their little week or 2 off, and then they reveal things over 2 weeks, and then a couple days after the final stream, they have they do the launch of the actual expansion. And if you look at the time frame, we're 2 weeks, we're in the middle of March, so we're exact month from the middle of April, and most people are guessing that it's going to launch sometime around the middle of April, like April 10th or something like that. So, excuse me, the timing seems right for this to be the reveal for the actual expansion, but there's so much going on, and the villains that they're talking about kind of roll into the idea that they're rotating the arena stuff, that it makes me feel like they've put so much information out there now, it's hard to actually pin anything down. So it makes me a little nervous, and I think it's probably just anxiety that or fear that we're gonna have to wait even longer for the rotation. That makes me second guess that. So
I don't think they can wait much longer. How many more Hearthstone streamers need to move to auto chess before they get the picture?
Jesus, I know, right?
Well, and that's a very sobering but real point. Like, I think we've seen consistently Hearthstone viewership spikes the second things start being teased and then released, as far as expansions and rotations are concerned.
Yes.
So if they're looking to really capitalize on the momentum, you have to strike at some point.
Right. And they have said that. They have said that the is going to be the World Championship is going to be in the new meta, which is on the 24th, 25th. So we know the new meta is going to start at least a week before that, so they have time to prep. Which it probably be 7 to 10 days minimum. 7 to 10 days minimum, which kind of leads credence again to that 9, 10, 11th kind of window as well, as for when they're targeting their release. So. We'll see where they're going with this. We know they like to have fun with Hearthstone, so we'll see what that means as far as misinformation or not. So, other than that, as far as what's going on, do we have anything going on with the team? Any of the other team members? Anything that we want to put out there as far as Eternal Orbit news? I will say this. I know that for those of you that maybe missed last week's episode, or maybe I can't catch it every week, we are working currently on an EO section on the page, on the EO page, to have a section for the Orbit. So all those VODs will be posted on there. We'll keep you posted on that. That is coming. But there's also going to be a section on there for posting questions, guest suggestions, topic suggestions, all kinds of stuff, ways for you to interact with the show directly and indirectly. So keep your eyes peeled for that. There is that coming. X or Root, anything you want to add to that?
I've got a couple things that seem worth mentioning to at least sprinkle some seeds going on.
Sprinkle away, my friend.
Hello, it's me. It's that meme of the person sprinkling on the. Anyways, you're welcome, millennials. So a couple things. The first thing is, I think it's okay that I tease this a little bit, but for anyone who's been interested in some insight to areas that maybe you don't always see these members of Eternal Orbit excel at, but maybe certain other ones do. I don't know. Arena? I don't know.
Ooh.
There may be some content in development to spotlight some of the things that are going to be going on with the rotation that's happening currently in production. Very excited to keep pushing content and like diversifying what you can read. And on top of that, PAX East is happening in about 2 weeks. So when this question is asked again next week, I will say the same thing. But myself, Striving Light, and Valstrin are all going to PAX East together and staying under the same roof. Then we will actually be going over to Striving Light's place afterwards for a few days and doing a stream and everything on, over there as well. So like, if anyone's going to PAX East, please feel free to come up to us. And if anyone wants to like say, hey, take pictures, like anything exciting, just like ask us where a certain panel's being held. Like we'll all be more than happy to see you. And then look forward to some upcoming content that we'll have from being there. So yeah, super excited about that. It was a lot of fun at TwitchCon with those two. So
heck yeah.
Keeping the train rolling.
That's super exciting. I didn't even know you guys were going to hang out at Reese's to do some in-person streaming. That's news to me, guys. So that's pretty exciting. I want to see that.
So
it'll be fun.
Risa better watch the podcast, otherwise it might be a surprise to her too.
Well, okay, let's.
Yeah, does she know about this, or did you just like write down her address and be like, "I'm going"?
I didn't book the flight correctly, so I'm either standing outside the event hall for an extra 3 days, or under a roof for the teammates. We'll see which one ends up happening.
Fair enough.
Good luck.
Fair enough.
Up in the air.
All right.
So,
well. Anything else that we want to talk about as far as team stuff going on? Okay.
Those are some highlights for me.
Yeah, I think so. We don't want to put too much out there. We do have some things
I was
coming.
gonna say, yeah, you'll hear about more as time progresses.
But the only people that likes to tease more than Blizzard are us. So
apparently so.
Yeah. Look forward to our 30-second clips coming to you
every day
in a month. We're gonna out Blizzard.
Oh, well played. Well played.
Thank you.
So I guess we can move on to the meat of the show now. A couple things we're going to go over this week as well. Another topic-packed week, just like last week. We're going to talk today about the Hearthstone Dev AMA that recently happened. That talks about a lot of the things that are coming with the rotation here very, very soon. We're going to discuss the Hearthstone Masters, the new official league for play, what that looks like and how they're doing it differently and what our thoughts are on that. And then we're gonna dive into detail after that into the new specialist format, which is the official format of play for this year's competitive scene. And then at the end of the show, we had a lot of requests for this, so we're gonna make sure that we have a segment at the end for Q&A. So stick around to the end of the show, guys. Pop when we queue for it. Have some questions ready. Pop them into chat, and we'll go over some with you before we sign off. So yeah. Without further ado, if I had a bumper here, I'd play it. Otherwise, let's get into it.
The orbit.
Clip it, make it happen.
It's a work in progress, okay? Just every time we transition, just disembodied voice saying the orbit.
I like it.
Oh, Jesus.
So, did you guys have a chance to look at this Dev AMA?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. It was really exciting, to be honest. I expected them to not answer any questions of substance, and surprise, surprise, they answered like 2 of them. So that's good.
It's 100% improvement over the past.
More communication.
That's
okay.
right. 2 questions, more communication. Now it was actually quite a lengthy AMA. And there was, if you read through the actual like transcript of the AMA, there's a lot of their normal like game developer kind of like, half speech or new speak, if we want to go, Orwellian here. And, a lot of the, we haven't determined yet, or we're still working on this, or we're still figuring that out kind of stuff. But there was quite a bit of like actual like juicy tidbits. Is there any one thing, Eric, that stands out to you as something that they talked about that you're just like, this stood out to me?
I mean, because like you said, or like X, I should say, said, and I guess there was some generalities, but the thing that made me excited was the fact that we're all expecting a new mechanic because they've consistently come out with new mechanics each expansion, or at least each expansion in the very recent past. And so I know we'll get into it a little bit, but the idea that they were teasing this new mechanic so blatantly was something that I was not expecting. I could maybe expect them to say, oh yeah, like you'll be seeing another mechanic. It may have to do with, like something very subtle, but they were not being subtle. And when we talk about it, it will be, you'll understand them being subtle is like an anvil being dropped on your head. The most obvious reference I can think of.
Wile E. Coyote.
Yeah, exactly.
X, anything stand out for you?
Yeah.
So yeah, obviously there was the new mechanic and the way they teased it. I don't know if we wanted to go into that too much at the moment. We wanted to push it to the right, but we'll get to that. Yep. Yeah, I'll say that. The other thing that really spoke to me is when they said, well, my mind just blanked. Oh, geez. Oh, they said about the arena, how they were going to have the rotating arena sets. And I then correlated that to when they said they are looking into or are leaving the possibility open of rotating old sets back into standard.
You called that,
so
yeah.
I'm wondering if arena is going to be just like the testing grounds, kind of like how we felt the last two Tavern Brawls were the testing grounds for Global Enchantment.
Yes.
I think that those two things may be on the way. Like, just maybe they don't announce it to us specifically, but it's how we're being used as their guinea pigs. We are the beta testers on the,
Oh yeah,
100%. Yeah, you nailed it. You picked right up on one of the things I was going to talk about, which was the rotating standard was something that really intrigued me, that they were open to that idea, which means I agree with you. I think it means that they're exploring it, they're testing it with Arena. I think they've really tested it in the past too with like Tavern Brawls, where they had a Tavern Brawl a while ago that had opened up to like a limited collection, or am I daydreaming that? I thought they had that at one point where there's a limited collection Tavern Brawl at one point. I could be wrong.
Most likely.
I thought I remember that being like, this is kind of cool. The thing though, beyond that really stood out for me, the one thing that really stood out to me was that they're looking at ways to change, in a positive way, I should say, that they're looking to change the player rewards. That they're looking at, that they're acknowledging that 10 golds per 3 wins is really unrewarding and very, very difficult. Like, who wants to spend 6 hours to earn 100 gold? And that's assuming you can win in this meta. You can win 30 games, or, because that's 30 games. And it's a lot of games to win to just get a pack of cards. And then that they were looking at more long-term goals and, in general. So I'm imagining like they're going to be more aggressive and more like vocal, or actually they're gonna make it easy because they have achievements in the game right now. Right. But they don't, but like, they're like, you can't see them anywhere and you can't track them. They just, every once in a while they'll pop up and like, here's 100 gold because you played 300 cards or whatever, or there's that chicken one, which I can't even remember what you get that for, but
you logged into your Samsung S6 and played a game of Hearthstone. Enjoy your pack.
Right. They have these obscure...
That's for the true memers out there.
Right. Yeah, they have these they have these obscure like achievements that happen and give you a little reward, and then you never see them again, and you can't even look them up to see if you've done them. So I think I get the impression that they're gonna have both a more aggressive reward system for playing the game, because they want to make it feel less grindy and less tedious, and I'm hoping that they implement some sort of achievement system or way to track these longer term rewards that they're talking about as well. So those are things that stood out for me. There was one thing that stood out to me that kind of worries me, but when that comes up in conversation, we can talk about that as well. So one of the things that they had mentioned in the AMA is that they're talking about having more unique events that they described as, will help shake the meta up in fun ways. What do you guys, did you guys notice that part, and do you have any particular thoughts on it?
Yes, and it's funny because right around the same time they were talking about the dual class arenas. I'm going back to arena. It feels like there's a really heavy concentration on the arena for this upcoming expansion. Just as a side note, but Jesus, my mind blanked again. I'm so sorry.
It's all right.
You're fine.
Can you kickstart me again? Like, I forgot where I was going with this.
Yeah, I asked if you had
about
any specific thoughts about, they talked about shaking the meta up, and then you started talking about
that's right.
the dual.
So it reminded me of the dual class arenas,
Yep.
like, because they mentioned that not too long afterwards.
Mhm.
It's like, what other ways can you imagine that they're going to shake it up? So if we take the dual class arena idea over to standard, what does that look like? Well, instead of it being multi-class, we're going to go multi-set. So now Hunter plays a card, let's say Baku-esque card, that says, hey, you can now use cards from, I don't know, please not Knights of the Frozen Throne, but some expansion in the past, Goblins
Right.
versus Gnomes.
Right.
Maybe something like that. Or like, a 2-week event for what do they celebrate? I don't know, International Labor Day or whatever. And
I love
Fire Festival or something.
to do stuff like that. Like, just adding the old cards back in. I think that that's what we're looking at for these fun events, because of the way the entire conversation that the devs were having was going,
Right.
Yeah.
Eric, anything to add?
I mean, honestly, mine's more of just a general point about the whole subject, but it's encouraging for them. I mean, these ideas don't come from a vacuum. And I think this idea in particular has to be rooted in some form from the conversation that's arose of, hey, at a certain point, if you play Hearthstone long enough, you sort of run out of incentive to keep playing.
Yes.
And that's very real. I think all of us experience that. I think anyone who's probably spent a fair amount of time playing Hearthstone is well aware that you can only do ladder so much. You can only kind of spice it up with arena for a little bit, or like vice versa, whatever your flavor is.
Right.
So I just am very encouraged that they're aware that there's more content that needs to be kind of fleshed out. As much as as much as Hearthstone is a big game, it's very bare bones.
Right.
And so being able, like if you look at the settings has like 3 options.
Yes.
When you go to change, like there should be a couple more options, even if they're just like mean nothing. If it's like, oh, all words are backwards, like something. So I think it's very encouraging in that sense that they're willing to play around with it. And then as they've shown, they've been pretty receptive with people's feedback.
Right.
Address it from that standpoint and then see what happens. I have no idea. I'm not gonna pretend I'm a game designer of any sort, but I do. I'm sure there's plenty of ways that they can make it exciting. Make all 3 cost drops have double the attack and health. I don't know.
Oh my god!
But just play around with it, and like if anything, you get people who are excited about something the same way people were excited about the Tavern Brawl last week, and you can kind of use those ideas to branch into more things, and that's really what this is all about.
Right.
So I'm excited.
I am personally. I'm cautiously excited. There are certain companies that I have a lot of faith in when it comes to producing games, because generally speaking, they do really good work. Blizzard is one of those. Despite the frustration with the current state of the game, or whatever you want to say, generally speaking, they're a very good company, and they make very good games, and they respond well to the community, and keeping so they work aggressively to keep their games flavorful and interesting and fun. So I have faith in that regard in Blizzard as a company for producing good content. But I'm cautiously optimistic when it comes to this, because I'm concerned in execution here. Because if you, for example, one of the things that we're all excited about with rotation is the power creep and the power level going down, right? All of these crazy bonkers things that keep happening are going to kind of go away a little bit. But that's all negated if they put another, version of Naturalize, or they put another OTK mechanic in the deck, or they put another, ridiculous random thing in the game. Well, the same thing can be true here if these events, even if they're only a week long, if they create too much of waves on, for example, the competitive ladder. That's kind of the same issue. Like, that scares me as much as I want different ways to play the game. It scares me to think that, okay, I'm grinding my way to legend, and I'm at rank 1, 2 stars, and then all of a sudden at 3 a.m. my time, the new Hearthstone day starts, and the event starts this week, and all of a sudden these crazy decks become viable, or this crazy mechanic happens, and now all of a sudden my legend climb is in danger because the meta just changed up when I'm inches away from my goal. So I think execution is going to be very, very important, at least for me, that I don't want to see it disrupt, the competitive or the serious climb by, once again, replacing in their competitive game competitiveness with fun and random. So I think execution is going to be important.
I mean, if we're gonna be completely honest with ourselves, it's gonna be really easy for them to shake the meta up more if they can just do it once every 3 months, and they can call it an expansion, because we haven't had one of those in 12 months. So
right. Well put. One of the other things I was interested in is, what do you think if they created a third ladder? We have the wild ladder, we have the standard ladder. What if they had like the limited ladder that was like this rotating set, or a limited, even more limited set, where it was like, might not have basic cards in it at all. Maybe 1 month it's 3 sets, and it's Gadget Stand, Old Gods, and I don't know, Kobolds, whatever it might be. But they had a more limited one, kind of like they're doing with the arena. I mean, who's to say? That would be something where, if they're going to mix the meta up, or mix how these kind of interactions in, that would be something I would like, if they're going to do it separate, so it doesn't penalize the people that are trying to, like, I don't know, practice for major tournaments or whatever by playing on the ladder, and messing with that whole flow, but also creates another game mode.
They actually have experience doing something like that in Overwatch. They made a ladder specifically for Lucio Ball.
Oh yeah, yep.
And for Capture the Flag. So I think that they already have the groundwork for it there. I'm sure the Overwatch team is talking to the Hearthstone team, because Gul'dan's going to be the next Overwatch hero. Oh, I wasn't supposed to spoil that.
Cut the stream, cut the feed right now.
but yeah, I mean, if they're communicating, they could definitely make it viable.
Oh my goodness.
Validation.
Yeah, and
yes.
And here's the tough thing, because I played League of Legends for a very long time, and one thing that happened with League of Legends is people were always asking for game modes, and they came up with a mode called Dominion, and Dominion lasted. It got taken out of the game because of how eventually small the pool of people who were continually invested in it became. And so the tough thing that Blizzard really has to balance is, if they start to go for something a little more niche like that, or like say, hey, this is a rotating set, but like it's its own ladder and it lasts for X amount of time, they have to really be conscious that they need it to be populated. And so they have to very strategically go about how they implement it. What I have seen floated around, and I would actually really like as well, is if they did a best of 3 ladder. They would have to implement it in a way that like because we're going to get to this with with the specialist format. But I think there's a way that you could implement it. It would almost be like a tournament mode, kind of, but it would be very fun. And you could potentially adjust your deck depending on, what you see. And so I don't know the best way to do that, but I could see that being a format that it's close enough to standard, that people would be familiar with it and not feel scared just because it's something so fresh and brand new. But at the same time, it would have some extra nuance to it that could bring people in and keep them. Again, that's not a fully thought out plan, so don't critique me too hard, but I think that there's legs to something which we're all agreeing on.
I loved the idea at first when I heard you saying it, but then 1 second passed in my head and the words Odd Warrior came across.
Yep. Which is why it'd be standard, and it would launch in more than a month from now. Sorry, Wild.
Oh man.
Or they just never have Witchwood in any of these rotating sets. Maybe.
Right. Well, there's
maybe get rid of those cards, but Gen and Baku can just leave.
Right. Well, if there was, I mean, they did talk about the returns of old sets being a potential in standard, like we were talking about. We know what's going to happen in Arena. They've already talked about that. If there was a set that was going to get rotated back into standard, do you guys have a favorite one? Like one that you just would love to see come back? I know we're all kind of like Witchwooded and Kobolds out, but anything else? Is there anything that you're just like, I miss this set or this mechanic that was in this set?
You know what's really, really cool in my mind? Having a bunch of little tiny mechs overwhelming the enemy. Give me goblins versus gnomes. Give me
easy.
I want to, yeah, exactly. I want to see Flamewaker. I want to see my little 2/3 buddy who.
Oh yeah.
The chugga. That guy.
Yes.
Yep.
I don't even know what the card's name is. These are the cards that I want.
Chugga.
Mech Mage.
Right. Mech Mage returns or Mech Shaman rides again. Either one of those decks were brutal back in the day.
Yeah.
Off stream, I definitely mess around with Mech Mage and Wild. It's really bad and I love it.
Eric?
If we're just gonna go for it, give me vanilla. Let's see how people do with only the cards that started in the game.
Guys, it's officially happened. There's now demand for a vanilla Hearthstone server.
I'm
to be released at the same time as the vanilla WoW server.
Yeah, it's time to be upset about that now.
Everybody sign the waiver.
Yeah, right? It would just be fun. Man, like Leroy cost Leroy was like 4 or 5 mana.
It was 4.
It was 4 mana when there was we'll have to at some point
Pyro's
look back at
8 mana.
Cards. Yeah, there's like, just imagine. That's like more ridiculous than Wild if they just implement it.
Oh god, yeah.
So yeah, that's my vote.
I would also agree GVG, but I think I struggled when I was thinking about this answer to surprise you guys with it.
Oh, geez.
Or to surprise you guys with this question. I mean, I was thinking about it off stream, and I was like, man, what would I answer to that? And I want to say GVG, but I have to put an asterisk next to that because I think GVG for me happened around the same time as my favorite time in the game. You know, we had GVG and we had Nax, and we had standard cards, and that was it. And to me, that was one of the best times to play the game. And there were some broken, busted cards in GVG. I mean, Dr. Boom is still played in Wild today, you know, and there've been how many broken cards that have come out since then. And it's still my favorite card. But so I don't know if it's an emotional appreciation for that time period in the game, which was my favorite time period to play in, where the game felt very different to play than it does now. Or if it was just the fact that was the set that made that happen. I'm not sure if it's a chicken and egg situation here or not, but definitely I think GVG is also would be the one I'd want to see come back.
Yeah.
One of the things they talked about too is that the weapons outside of the traditional classes are going to be unlikely for a while. Do you guys have particular thoughts on this?
Goodbye, Scala Minari. I won't miss you.
Right.
And any cards trying to imitate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I put this in some notes, but there's so many ways that the game design team can implement anything that's not a weapon. Like, I don't think mages have to have a weapon. I don't think warlocks have to have a weapon. Like, this whole announcement is to say, hey, going forward, we won't be developing any cards like a warlock weapon or a mage weapon or a priest weapon. And that seems perfectly fine. They've already shown that they have a consistent theme that they can push. There were spell stones, and then they just did the spirits, and I guess it was just the spirits were kind of the cards that every class got. Those totems that are stealthed on the first turn. So like they'll come up with something, and I don't think we're all so invested in weapons that like unless we're serious cosplayers, but only for warlock and mage and priest, and we want to make sure we're holding a weapon. I think it's fine. I think there's a lot of ways they can make up that ground that people won't be too worried.
Do you think it's more of a cosmetic thing? Like, some people are just looking at the game and like, why is there this empty spot to the left of my hero? I need there to be a weapon there. Maybe it's just a cosmetic thing.
It could be the human brain winning again. If we're taking it.
It's funny because, you know, Hearthstone's a spin-off of WoW, at least in like lore and like, you know, class idea or class identity. I mean, and every class in WoW had a weapon that they could wield and use and utilize of some kind. So it does kind of make sense. But from a standpoint, a gameplay standpoint, you know, hero power I think is enough to kind of emulate that. And the hero power alone is already very, very powerful. If you don't realize how powerful a hero power is, then why do you think Warlock is always one of the top classes in the meta? Always. Because their hero power is by far the most insane one that there is. So hero power is powerful enough. Now when you add in a weapon, you're basically giving somebody a second hero power. And that is can be very dangerous and can be very polarizing. Because it can create you know, these Genbaku situations where it's like, well, I could do this you know, aggro deck in you know, I don't know, priest, but why would I when it fits so much better with warlock? You know, so I think it's a slippery slope when you start doing that. I'm always curious though if they're going to like come up with a replacement mechanic that emulates it, but that isn't a weapon. Oh, look, guys, we didn't put weapons in here. However, you can play this card that gives you the ability to spray magic once per turn from your offhand. You know, that worries me because, you know, Blizzard's done that before. You know, that when they keep putting it, like they put in Mechathune, for example, they brought back Cthulhu and they changed him, So
Yeah.
You never know what they're going to do, and sometimes I worry that they're talking on both sides of their mouth. So that's a concern that I had about that.
I think a cool mechanic that they could play around with. I don't know how you balance this because it sounds inherently overpowered.
Mm-hmm.
But if they made a class specific card or start at the beginning of the game, whatever thing, passive, where at the start of your turn something happens every single turn, just in perpetuity. I don't know how they'd balance that, but if you're just thinking of ways that they can implement something where it's almost like an image still next to your portrait, like a weapon would be, but instead it's this passive that you have, because I don't know. Passives, I suppose, didn't really exist in Warcraft for like class-based characters. They only did for races.
Right.
But I don't know. There's ways they could play around with it, I'm sure, to make it so that if we really want that eye candy.
Auras.
Auras? Oh, yeah. Oh, that would be cool. Like
yeah.
and you'd start with like maybe 5 extra health or something,
Yeah.
or like regeneration. Could you imagine?
Geez.
You gain health at the start of your turn, like 2-3 health. Clip it. Like priest get like renew or something.
Stop
And that would be fun to theory craft.
Stop trying to break me.
Yeah.
Nope, too bad. We're gonna behold a post show where I just break everyone's brain.
You're just gonna talk about ways to buff priest for an hour, and then I'm not gonna be able to stream for the rest of eternity.
They're gonna buff priest by making Psychic Scream a standard card.
Yeah,
that's the biggest thing that they were missing from the AMA. Nobody asked when they were gonna rotate priest out.
And priest gets buffed if exiles leaves, so we have to make sure exiles stays in Hearthstone.
I love
True.
it. Is there anything else before we move on to like the kind of the elephant in the room with this AMA, which is the new mechanic discussion? Is there anything else from this AMA that we wanted to focus on before we moved on to that? Anything you guys wanted to point out?
Yeah, we didn't mention Smork Slurper, Sludge Slurper.
Oh yeah. Thank you for reminding me. Go on, X. Why don't you extrapolate on that?
It's gonna be a Murloc. That's all I got. Let's go.
Wait,
that,
I'm
please.
gonna pretend that treat me like someone who doesn't know what you're saying right now.
I said,
what are you talking about? Okay. Is Sludge Slurper?
It appears to be the name of a new card.
Okay.
Word for word.
Yep. They've teased a new card.
Okay.
Leaked a new card, however you want to say it. There's information flowing around that there's a card called Sludge Slurper, and we're all trying to, and the internet is abuzz with trying to figure out what it is.
Oh yeah.
I'm guessing it's an ooze of some kind, but who knows? It could be something that eats oozes. It could be a guy with a straw and a 7-Eleven Slurpee cup, and I don't know. Who knows?
Hasbro custom card designs. Oh yeah,
I want everything to be a Murloc. Give me Murloc Mage.
I'm
if I have even lock, I want Murloc Mage.
Let's see. I'm double checking my notes really quickly to see if there's anything else that seems worthwhile aside from the mechanic. But we've already talked about a lot of things. They'd mentioned communication, which we went over. We went over player rewards. Again, I think it makes sense. I agree with Azrael on that point. Like, I think they do need to have some level of, either if it's gonna be like a just static achievements, like you hit this once and you get your gold, or if it's gonna be like, hey, there's these achievements that everyone has to hit for this month, and maybe it's a progress bar, like get, I don't know, 100 wins, you work your way up 10 wins at a time, and you get like whatever 20 gold until you end with like a big 100 gold or something like that would be fun.
Right.
Otherwise though, I'm ready to talk about the mechanic and start guessing.
Let's do it.
Yes.
Who wants to start? Eric, you're excited. Go for it.
I've got the and I put the quotes and everything up here as well, so I'm ready to do this.
Do
so
it.
There was a chain on Reddit where they were doing the AMA, obviously, where someone had asked if there was, I'm pretty sure the main comment was just, hey, is there a mechanic in the works for this expansion? Like, or do you, what is the plan for that, et cetera, et cetera. And so consecutively, 3 different designers responded to each other. The first one said, didn't someone already ask this? I swear I'm seeing twins, and every word that I do this with is italicized. The next person said, I just wanted to double down on the fact that we can't give any new keywords away. And the last person said, geez, y'all, don't just, I did it at the wrong point there, don't just spell it out for everyone. So the keywords here that they mentioned were twins, double down, and spell.
Twinning spells. There's going to be spells that cast twice. That was my guess. To steal everybody's thunder, that's my guess.
Yeah. That wow.
Same
I
thing.
got
That's
hot
been
out
a
the gates.
that's been a mechanic around in Magic the Gathering since the beginning. It's
Yes.
called fork.
Mm-hmm.
It just you copy target spell on the stack, which there's no relatable thing in Hearthstone. Basically, something that's being cast is on the stack, and choose a new target for it, and copy it. So you're for 1 extra mana and an extra card, you pay 2. So I wonder if this is going to lead to some sort of variable mana cost cards.
Mm-hmm.
Remember when we had the 0 cost spells? Spend all the rest of your mana, do
yeah.
something insanely powerful. Well, what if it's select 3, 5, or 7 mana and get 1 copy, 2 copy, or 3 copies of the spell?
Oh, kind of a throwback to Kazakus.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah, like merging Kazakus and then the variable mana spells. Ooh, interesting. Guys,
That's
we're doing
super exciting.
Yeah, I mean, Blizzard, you got three developers right here. We're coming out with great ideas. We got this.
I could use a $250,000 a year salary, Blizzard, please.
Right.
If we have to. Well, one thing that's surprising me from you, Azrael, is that let's say that is the condition. I'm surprised the word spell hunter have not already left your mouth at this point. Considering the fact that they've already introduced some synergy, and considering that if you could cast hunter spells, like just think of what a traditional hunter spell looks like. Imagine casting it twice, and that's it. That's it. That's so exciting just to think about. Holy cow. I had a couple thoughts. So my first one was I actually did not think. Well, I thought that was a possibility, what you had both mentioned, but it wasn't on my list of these two things. The first one, which could happen, and I'm only saying this because there's already a mechanic that exists that does this, but it's not, I guess it's not entirely. Anyways, let me get to the point. Unstable Evolution has its own sort of echo effect, but it's not called echo and you can do it infinitely as long as you have the mana for it. I'm thinking same sort of thing. It's just a new keyword that applies to being able to cast something twice. That I suppose could be fork, but maybe not have any sort of effect. I don't know. This is apparently what you both just said, and I'm now realizing it. The second thing, I was too excited for my section. The second thing was if you cast a spell twice, the second time you cast it, it has a special effect, which you also had mentioned. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I guess I'm right on the same point, and I just made this a little bit more exciting by pretending like it was fresh information to mislead the audience.
Hey, we add a little spice to the conversation, though.
Oh, well, and thank you. I made sure to drink a little extra water today for the pep.
No, so here's the thing, though, guys. Like, if let's go down the theory crafting hole for just a moment here. If this is a twinning or cast a spell twice, we've seen how just like oppressive and painful Unstable Evolution can be, especially with like Kragwa. Like, oh my god, is this going to end up? Is this opening the door for replacing the broken mechanics that we've experienced for the last year with just another new like ridiculous broken mechanic that people might not even enjoy playing, but it's so strong you have to play it anyway? Or am I just being like overly paranoid from a year of OTK punishment?
Do you remember when Magnetic was coming out? People were all like, this mechanic is so strong, it's going to take over the game in all minion-based decks. Mm-hmm. What Magnetic minions are played? Literally only Ziliax. Mm. So at first glance or at first thought, these things can seem very, very oppressive. However, if you tune it well, i.e. making it overcosted by 1 mana, because 1 mana is a huge difference. Like, could you imagine Lost in the Jungle costing 2 mana?
Yeah.
Hero power.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know.
No, you're exactly right. That's the thing. That's what makes it messed up. Right. But yeah, it's like
anything else.
Yeah, by overcosting it by 1 mana, like they did with War Gear, like they did with Ziliax. I think Ziliax is overcosted by 1 mana, even though it's the most broken card from the set. Mm-hmm. But yeah, by doing that, they can make sure that it's not too oppressive. I went all over the place to come back to that original point.
It's beautiful.
And here we are.
Yeah, and I appreciate you kind of reining it in a little bit because I think part of like the Hearthstone psyche right now is it's like we all have a little bit of like we're all a little traumatized right now because we kept seeing these like the broken stuff that happened with Knights and then with kobolds, and then with Witchwood, once Witchwood rolled around, I mean, everybody was like, holy crap, what's going on with this game? Oh, don't worry, Boom will fix it, and it just enabled it more. And they're like, don't worry, Rastakhan will fix it, and it just was more of the same. And then they nerfed it twice, and it's still kind of basically the same. So I think there's a little bit of trauma from people that play it as much as most of us do, that it's like, all right, we keep getting our hopes up only to get our souls crushed a little bit. And so thank you for reining it in a little bit with some perspective there, X. I know that I appreciated it because it's funny because I've got this duality going on in my brain here where I see it and I go, I believe in Blizzard, I trust it, I'm excited for this thing, and then my brain immediately goes, but the last time I felt like this, OTK,
I got hurt.
Yeah, OTK decks, were crushing my soul. So
yeah, no,
we
that's
were
a good
literally
point.
in an OTK meta for like 2 weeks.
Boy. Yeah. What a time to not be alive.
No shit.
Just congrats to all the babies who were born after those 2 weeks. You didn't have to live in this world.
Well done.
Thank you.
Oh, Jesus.
Well, yeah.
Man. 10
and
out of 10.
I think like that I appreciate it. I think that I'm not too concerned at this point with the way that Blizzard, like, there's very well a chance that whatever they introduce ends up being hilariously overpowered, and I'm sure we'll have to live with it for maybe a month, maybe 2 months, but it's not going to take the whole set for it to be rotated into Wild and them say, okay, we're going to nerf this. Like, I think that the fact that they're emphasizing communication and they've shown more than once now that it's more than just talk, means that if something is overtuned, they'll address it. Most likely, they've been leaving like one thing untouched consistently when they do address situations, but like that's better than the nothing.
I'm pretty sure they do that to show dominance. Like, don't
forget who owns you.
That's right. Don't worry, we'll address this one problem, but just so you don't forget who's in charge here.
Yeah.
Just so you don't forget who's in charge, we're not nerfing Super Collider.
Yeah, exactly. Which, hey, if Super Collider were 6, it would still get played. It would still be punishing. It just wouldn't be so much. Anyway.
You just made me think of like a tavern brawl where you can only play Odd Warrior, and you have to get like 5 wins to get your pack.
Oh, Jesus. That's where I just don't get the pack for that week.
Oh, yeah. And then replace the standard.
Oh, my God. Stop giving them ideas.
I would replace Hearthstone with, like, I don't know, anything.
Just Fatigue Warrior Mirror Maker.
Anything else?
It would make Hearthstone the best game to fall asleep to.
Oh, man. While playing.
They'd have to lower Garash's voice a little bit. Maybe add in some like a little more like subtly like a loon vocals in the background.
Now, why'd you have to mention Garage? You know my affinity for Mr. Garage there. All right.
Keep it in your rectangle over there, buddy. Okay.
I can't help it. I get excited when you mention him. But that's a conversation for another day.
That's next week.
Yeah, right. Is there anything else from this AMA or this mechanic that we want to touch on before we move on to the new competitive format?
I think we nailed it.
I think so too. Rough segue because no bumper.
Eternal Orbit.
The Orbit.
The Orbit. I can't even do it right.
Dang. Wow. Nice try. All right, this bumper fail. Earlier this month, they announced that they're launching Hearthstone Masters. I know I'm quoting it like it's like made up. They're launching what they're calling Hearthstone Masters, which is the new like tournament, the official tournament scene for this, at least for this year, and I'm assuming for the foreseeable future, which is quite a bit different than what they were doing in the past. I know we touched on this a little bit last week, but X, I know that you're kind of jumping into the Masters with both feet. You're really excited about this format, like you talked about last week. Do you kind of want to go over like what it is and how it's different from the previous one? And then of course you mentioned that it's a lot more accessible, so you can kind of go into that too if you wouldn't mind, for those that aren't familiar with what it is.
Yeah, so I guess I'll give a brief rundown of how the Masters qualifiers are working. So the way that it works is it's being run in a format called Specialist, which is different than the other format, which other two formats, which is Conquest and a different failed format.
Last year's Dating.
Last Hero Standing. That's right. So in Last Hero Standing and Conquest, you either have to win a game with each of 3 different decks, or you need to beat all of your opponent's 3 different decks, depending on which of the 2 you're playing. In Specialist, you only bring 1 deck, and then, you bring 1 main deck, and then you can have a secondary and a tertiary, which are allowed to differ from the main deck by no more than 5 cards. Now, the secondary and tertiary can be different from each other by more than 5. It needs to be from original deck. Mm-hmm. And then in the qualifiers, you're playing through. You play through 8 rounds, and the top 8 players from the first 8 rounds of Swiss, which is the people just playing against each other is what that means. They move on to the bracket, which, since it's an 8-person bracket, it's just the quarterfinals essentially. Then you get to semis and then finals. It's single elimination bracket, and then from there, if you win the entire thing from one of these opens, you get to go to Vegas to go to Worlds which has $250,000 prizes, $50,000 for first place. Also, with these tournaments, not just first place gets to go to Vegas, but first place also gets 20 packs. Second place gets 20 packs, and then it goes all the way down to, I think, 64th place gets 1 pack. So and you're able to play in these for free. You just sign up for them on battlefy.com. The user HS Esports is the one who holds all of the tournaments on there. And yeah, you can sign up for any of them. I've played in 3 so far. I went 6-2 and 6-2, making 16th place and 12th place respectively, just missing out from that top 8. Mm-hmm. And then the other one, I went 2-1, and then I dropped after the 3rd round after my loss because I had other stuff I needed to do, and taking an early loss really hurts your tiebreakers. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That's fair.
And now, last week, again, we touched on this briefly, and you'd mentioned that it's a lot more accessible than than previous competitive formats. Can you talk about how the accessibility works? You touched on it a little bit, but how they're improving accessibility for people that maybe haven't had a chance to be in the competitive scene at all?
Absolutely. So I hear this all the time, and I'm sure you guys too while you're streaming. Oh, I'd be a Legend player, but I don't have the time to play, right? I only play 100 games a month or whatever. Well, that's the great thing about this. You don't need to be a certain rank. Before, in order to get HCT points from the ladder, you would need to finish in the top 1,000 got 1 point, then top 500 got 2, top 200 got 4, and then it rolled all the way up to I don't remember what the top of it was, but that's essentially it. So the people
in Legend, you're talking about in Legend.
Yes. So the people who didn't have time to grind to Legend and then to High Legend just never had a chance to get in these big tournaments, the HCT tournaments. Now you can qualify using one of these through one of these qualifiers, which is open. I've played against people who are rank 20, rank 5, and even as high as rank 17 Legend. I've played people from all over the ladder. It's accessible to anybody. You just got to sign up and go. Mm-hmm. And you don't need to have a meta deck. You just need to have 30 cards. Mm-hmm. It's super cool. It's great for anybody, and you can play on whatever region you have the cards for. For example, Sir Salty, he just won one with Death Rattle Hunter on NA server, and he's living in England at the moment. So yeah, it's so accessible. Mm-hmm. You can access it across the world. It's really great. And for people like us, for streamers, we don't have a lot of time to go to tournaments, go to LANs, because that takes away from our stream.
Correct.
And we definitely can't miss our stream because that's what we do. Mm-hmm. So being able to have it at a time where we can even stream it if we want, and they actually banned somebody who stream sniped during this tournament, like round 3. They banned somebody from the tournament because there was proof that he had done it. Yeah. Wow. So they're also backing up the content creators, which is fantastic.
That's huge. Yeah, that's huge. Way to really support your community. So
not to mention awesome. This format is just so much. This format is great. Mm-hmm. I'm a huge fanboy of this tournament, of this format and what Blizzard did here. Thank you very much, Blizzard. Yeah. Oh yeah. Great. It's great.
Well, we'll dive more into that in a second. But before we do, is there anything else that we wanted to touch on about how this new format works, or anything that we might have missed?
I did want to touch on one thing because I literally went to the page and was like, I'm going to have a definition ready just in case. And the only thing that I wanted to add is say that you are someone who has a lot of time and you can consistently hit like top 200 legend. They do have a special situation for you, which I'm going to read directly because I can't memorize that. When you hit top 200 legend in a month, you're invited to participate in a ranked ladder qualifier. The biggest thing that's different from that compared to the standard opens is the top 4 finishers will earn a spot in the Masters Tour event, as opposed to just the top player.
Really?
So it's a nice way to reward those who do have shown that consistency by giving them a higher chance once they're part of the open qualifier to actually make it into the event.
So we're looking at UX.
Yeah.
One thing I've talked to a few of the a few other high legend ladder players about it, and like a few people who are Hearthstone professionals, and they all agree that it is going to be way easier to win an open than to win a tournament with the 200 best players on the planet, because there are not 200 good players playing in the opens.
Yes. It's nuts that I mean, and that's how it is for a lot of situations, but just to think about the difference between you're going against who knows who versus, like X said, the top 200 players, you're literally getting the cream of the crop of people who've ended with the most points in a season facing each other. It's nuts to think about.
It's going to be a super hype tournament, though. Like, I hope Blizzard casts it.
Yeah. Maybe like the final table of the World Series or something like that, which is interesting, because that was the one thing I was going to say about this tournament format is I like that they're modeling other successful card game formats. So in this case, they're modeling the World Series of Poker format with this is literally sit and goes is what they would call these in poker, where you basically buy into, so there's like you want to play in a big tournament, like $1,000 or $5,000 or $10,000 buy-in tournament. Most people don't have that kind of money to just risk losing all of to play in this tournament, but you can buy what are called these sit and goes, which are little mini tournaments where you pay like a fraction of the price to get in, and the winner that wins, the person that wins that, it's an all or nothing kind of situation, then gets a seat in that more expensive tournament. So you can get in for a tenth or even less if it's a multi-stage one, because they do have those for the higher end tournaments. So I'm glad that they're modeling that, because it's been very, very successful at making the World Series of Poker no limit hold'em in general accessible to the average person who only has a little bit of money to risk playing poker versus the professionals that have hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars. And it's made the fan base for that so much bigger. That's why it's one of the most watched things on ESPN every year. So kudos to Blizzard for doing what they do best, which is taking the best parts of other similar things and incorporating them into theirs to make their product better. So I really like that a lot. And I'm happy with, if nothing else, I'm happy with them changing how the competitive scene operates to be like that.
And it's not just the World Series of Poker they're modeling either. They're also modeling Magic the Gathering. You guys know I bring this up every other sentence. Of
By
course,
all
I have
means.
a background with Magic. But what the specialist format is just like any Magic tournament, where you bring a 15 card sideboard and your 60 card deck, and then after game 1, you can swap in and out any number of cards from the 15. Well, if we cut that in half to a Hearthstone deck, it's 30. So it would be 7.5 cards different.
Close.
Very close. Very close.
You know what I'm saying? It sounds exactly the same to me. So,
excellent perspective.
Yep. They took Magic the Gathering success, World Series of Poker success, and made this absolutely fantastic format to play in.
Yeah, I love that analogy. That is such an on point way to look at it. So yeah, well put. So that brings us into the specialist format in particular. X, I know you've already hinted that you're excited at it. I have dabbled in it a little bit. I know that I'm actually practicing with toying around with some decks, because there's a couple of like community tournaments that I wanted to enter and play around with the format as well. So I have some thoughts on it as well. But Eric, why don't you tell me your thoughts on it? What do you think about the specialist format? And then we'll get to X so he can gush over it for a little bit before.
Oh, please.
Gush more,
yeah.
you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cedar Rapids over there. So as far as specialist is concerned, I feel like I'm one of the more lukewarm receptions to it, honestly. And the only thing that's been coloring that in is current context. I think for the future, once rotation hits, I will be a lot more excited about it. What I'm worried about, though, and what we've been seeing very consistent, or not very consistently, but from the pros who I follow, or just the competitive players who I follow on Twitter, and hearing some of their insights, mid-range hunter, I'm sure we're all aware of, is dominating the format in a very big way. I know when it first started, there was percentages, but it's just overwhelmingly the pick. Then you see Q Block actually come in somewhere near that top. I saw Priest of some kind, I believe it's Control Priest, and then Odd Warriors kind of lingering in there as well. And that's why the rounds are taking so long when those mirrors happen. So the thing that I'm worried about with this matchup, or with this whole format in general, is that once the meta sort of settles down and you get an idea of what the really strong picks are, you're pretty much incentivized to pick the strongest safe deck possible. Yes. And that'll just happen through percentage points. And then I guess I'll address this first part. But so when you do that, other people will be doing the same, and you'll keep on seeing these situations where one archetype specifically is really standing out. And what I'm worried about is, as a player, like if I'm playing a deck I enjoy, I can slam as many games as I want with it, and I will have a blast. So I'm not necessarily worried about that. I am worried about burnout from other players who are playing these long rounds with the same deck. But I'm worried from a spectation view, honestly. As a viewer myself, one of the things that I've really valued, especially when I was learning how to play Hearthstone, was with formats like Conquest or Last Hero Standing, not only was there variety in the decks that were being played, but variety in the education that you were receiving by watching it. So I wouldn't just learn about this matchup between like, oh, let me watch this Tempo Mage play and see how this pro plays Tempo Mage. But I'd see how they play Tempo Mage versus one deck versus another deck versus another deck, or how they played their shaman and their warrior on top of all that. It was a better viewing experience because of the variety, but also because I valued learning that and then hearing insight from the casters as well. So that's something I am cautious about when it comes to the format, and I'm really hoping that with the rotation they're going to commit to this idea that they've always liked of there's a healthy diversity as opposed to an oppressive diversity where it's like, oh, an OTK meta or anything. That's something they're really going to have to put their money where their mouth is, because I think the success of this entire format completely weighs down on that factor.
Yes,
so
I agree.
I'm really hoping it pays off, but that's such a tall order that I've got some concern, but I'm hoping for the best. I'd love to see it succeed. We all love this game. We want it to succeed.
For me, I emulate a lot of what your feelings are, Eric. In that I'm afraid it's going to be very polarizing, because you're going to see, like, again, if I was thinking about this off stream, if they were to, they're doing it now, right? And so I'm like, okay, what would be in the current meta? It's going to be Hunter, it's going to be Warlock, and it's going to be Warrior. Those are going to be the three classes that everybody's going to gravitate to for the most part. And it's going to be one of those things where I think from a spectator standpoint, it's dangerous, because it's going to be like, well, I don't want to watch another 45-minute hour per games times 3 Odd Warrior session, so I'm just going to go watch somebody else. Or I'm tired of seeing the same deck that I hate seeing on the ladder already, and I certainly don't want to watch it 3 games in a row, so I'm just not going to watch the tournament. So I think from a spectating standpoint, there is some risk there as well. And also I have concerns that it's just going to push the entire meta towards these super polarizing kind of decks as well. So that said, though, I like the format. I should let me correct that. I love the format in principle. Love it. I love the idea of having, the ability to have a sideboard and kind of to tweak your deck for various matchups and to play around within these constraints, because I love these like deck building challenges. One of the tournaments we're gonna mention here at the end of the show that I'm playing in has an extremely limiting specialist format that I'm super excited to play in for the challenge of it. But the more and more I look at it, I'm like, mid-range hunter is just going to dominate this tournament. But it's still a fun style in theory to build within. So there is some good with it. I just, like emulating what you said, I just hope that Blizzard is aware of it when they release cards, and they plan out these metas in the future with what they're planning on releasing, that they got to keep in mind how it's going to affect the competitive scene, and if it's going to kind of incentivize these worst case scenario matchups that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Now go ahead and silver lining our cloud, please.
So I don't think we're giving the viewers enough credit. Like, the people who are going to watch the competitive format, they're in it for the high level play.
Mm-hmm.
You're not playing your highest level with 4 different decks. Azrael, are you as good with Odd Warrior as you are with Spell Hunter?
No.
Brood Clouds, are you as good with, I don't know, Even Lock as you are with Cube Lock? First 2 decks. I know that you're a Cube Lock expert. Yeah, you guys know what I'm saying? Like, so me as a competitor, as a spectator of competitive play, I want to see Titans battling it out with the best tools that they have. And this is the best way to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're talking about what the best decks on ladder are versus the best decks for tournaments, do you guys happen to know, this is a complete setup, I know you don't, what the top 5 decks on ladder are according to HS3 Play?
You take stabs, but it would take a while.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I'm gonna list them in order.
Yeah.
Okay.
Secret Paladin, number 1. Number 2, Even Paladin. Number 3, Odd Paladin. Number 4, Death Rattle Hunter. Number 5, Odd Warrior. Let's go a little further until we find Mid-Range Hunter, which we're talking about being oppressive in this format. Mm-hmm. Number 6, Odd Rogue. Number 7, Wall Priest. Number 8, Odd Quest Warrior. Number 9, Secret Odd Mage. Number 10, Secret Hunter. Then Even Lock, Odd Mage, Control Priest, then Mid-Range Hunter.
Damn.
As far as the winningest decks.
Yeah.
So I don't think that, well, I know that the tournament meta does not reflect on the ladder meta, especially not with what's being successful. And that comes down to, because on the ladder, you need to play the safest deck. Something like, for example, you used to play Skulking Geist in Even Lock.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But Skulking Geist was only good against one matchup. Every other time it was a 4/6. But you would never take it to a tournament unless you were expecting Druid,
Mm-hmm.
So this format especially allows you to completely separate yourself from the ladder and think in a completely separate meta. And the viewer who's viewing for this, for the competitive experience the same way that I am, is going to be like, oh, that's a really cool tech. I did not think to put Nerubian and Raveler in Death Rattle Hunter, so then I could cube it, and then that Control Priest can't ever use Psychic Scream.
Mm-hmm.
You get to start to see cool, innovative things like that being played in specific matchups, and you get to learn way deeper about the matchups. Like, if you have an unfavored matchup and the dude, like, super unfavored, and the dude comes back and just able to overcome it, that would be as iconic as Kibler flipping Bonfire of the Damned off the top of the deck. Again, Magic reference, don't worry about it.
Landed.
Yeah, I think you really nailed it with the perspective there. It's kind of like why some viewers don't like to watch soccer, football. It's because they don't appreciate the same way that the hardcore football fans do, in that, it's about finesse and strategy and patience and execution. They just want to see goals scored, right? So I think that's a really good perspective to put in there. And then, of course, the other thing, all I want to say about the ladder percentages is that the matchmaker conspiracy is real, and I'll move on from that. Eric, any thoughts to what X said?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm very much rooting for it to be a positive format, and I could be projecting too much my own concerns when I watch a tournament, because I will tune out if it's like if it's an Odd Warrior matchup, I'm gonna pay less attention than if it's something. It's like, oh, a pro's playing Cube Block, or a pro's playing something wacky. Like they brought their what was that Peanut Shaman, like right. Something like that pops up. Like, that's always very exciting. So like I'm concerned if all of a sudden I see, okay, this is going to be a a priest versus a druid matchup or something, that'd be a little less incentivized or a little less excited about compared to like, maybe they also brought their decks, or it could be just it was two other players who played their two separate decks. I'm worried that that's going to be a barrier for myself to be as engaged as I would want to be under different circumstances. But again, who knows? I think, I don't know. I'll say I hope for the best, and we'll see. But I think Exiles does put a very good perspective on it.
Yes, he does.
And I don't take away from that at all, because I think it's very well said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I just want to reiterate it again because I really appreciate kind of X being the calming voice of reason here, in the fact that, again, because my default is to want to get excited about these things, and then I get into my own, I get into my own anxieties that come from playing in a traumatic meta for a year, and it's nice to have somebody else come out and go, hey, wait a second. Here's some reality for you. So thanks for bringing that perspective in here as well.
To be fair, I've played terrible card games for a terrible amount of years, so perspective is one thing I have here. Absolutely.
And that's why we love you. That's the only reason, though. That's it.
Yeah, I don't want to be loved for anything else other than my terrible ideas on this.
So do you guys think that this effectively addresses the sideboard problem that people have been kind of clamoring for in all formats of competitive? Or
Yes.
would you still like to see a version of like Eric was talking about, a version of specialist or sideboard in the ladder scene as well?
So I personally, those are two different things that we're talking about. When we talk about a ladder and when we talk about a tournament, I do not equate them really to even being the same type of game. Mm-hmm. It's like comparing the ladder to Tavern Brawl.
Fair. That's fair.
So
I just meant sideboards. Would you still want to see some version of sideboards in the ladders? What I was getting at.
Oh, and the ladder. Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I guess I kind of confused your main.
I didn't explain it very well.
In any case, I think on the ladder, it's not a good place for sideboards. If you want to have something like that, you have leagues, which Blizzard totally doesn't endorse anymore, or you have friendlies that you can play.
Mm-hmm. So, that's fair.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, that's my thoughts on it. There needs to. I like the competitive formats that Blizzard has. If you want to play in a format with sideboards, go play in tournaments. There's plenty of opens all over the place. If you don't, play on ladder, dude.
It's fair.
And it's nice that they gave the opportunity to have that answer, because before there wasn't an option.
Right.
I agree.
Yeah. And that's obviously sideboard is a term that I wasn't aware existed until these changes happened. This is my first card game. And even then, I would only watch Hearthstone as well. So I don't have much of a wealth of knowledge. But like I said, I think it's just the fact that there's an option now. Worst case, they can build off this and say, hey, you know what? Apparently there is demand, or apparently there are opportunities to keep tweaking this.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they did a solid job on at least setting things up and giving people that option.
Yeah,
it is so cool. Oh, I'm sorry. It's so cool to see the changes they're making as a direct response to looking at becoming more competitive. I can't figure out the best way to put that, but they were Blizzard's been trying to really push esports. Obviously Overwatch League, and now here with the Masters Tour, and especially trying to make it more accessible. And we've already talked through all of that. It's super. I don't know where I started, but cool. We're gonna give it a thumbs up and say, what were you saying?
I was just you basically said what I was going to get at, which is I'm glad that they're exploring ways to make it more competitive. I absolutely like the idea of the specialist decks from in a vacuum for a competitive standpoint. I think it's the best way to sit there and go, because like I was saying with the question I asked earlier, how nice would it be when you're on ladder to queue up your 3 specialist decks of, say, we'll just use me for example. I'm playing Spell Hunter or whatever, and I go, I queued into an Odd Warrior. I can use this tech version, or I queued into a Warrior. I don't know if it's odd or not, but I can use this version. I queued into a Druid. I can use this variation, or I queued into anything else, and I just use the one that I queued up with initially. I think giving people that little bit of flexibility helps to would help to alleviate some of the the ladder anxiety or the frustrations with the matchmaker system. That was my take on it. But applying it back to this format, I love the fact that they're making the competitive scene much more much more competitive by actually allowing you to plan ahead and say, okay, I'm playing even lock. I'm weak against this deck, so I can create this variation to target specifically my weakest matchup, and then I can have another slight variation for other whatevers. And I think that really highlights skill in a really, really cool way. So in principle, I'm really excited for it. Anything else to add, guys?
I could gush over specialist for the next half hour if you wanted, but
I figured as much. All right. Well, that pretty much wraps up the meat of our conversation today. We wanted to open it up again, like we talked about at the start of the show, for a Q&A section. If you guys had any questions, comments, or anything related to the things that we discussed today, or if you want to tag somebody specifically in there, or just put it to the panel of us. But if you have any questions right now, go ahead and throw them in the chat right now, and we will get to them.
Oh, I get to pull up chat now?
Yeah.
Yeah, Eric, I see that. We'll do that at the end.
Is this at Eric at me?
Yes. Yeah, I was saying the thing you highlighted, we'll do that at the end.
Oh yeah, please. Yeah, I'm good.
I know that Jolt had mentioned using Whizbang in this format. Whizbang wouldn't work because you have no way to specialize it out. Whizbang is completely random. I understand what you're saying, but it just doesn't work for the format at all. So
yeah, they've actually banned it. Like that's their sole banned card.
Whizbang
is you can't run a deck with Whizbang in it because it becomes a Whizbang deck.
Right. Exactly.
Oh, but it's so pretty.
Okay. Well, while people are taking a moment, if they want to use this to ask a question or not, there's a couple things that we wanted to talk about in our, at the end of the show, we like to do a community and fan segment, where we just kind of talk about, players or members of the community or things that are going on around the community around us, just because we're big on community here. So some of the things that we wanted to highlight this week, since we were talking so much about specialist, is a couple of specialist tournaments that are coming up in the next couple of weeks. One of them is going to be our friend Dragon Rider DK over in her channel. She is having a what she's calling the Dragon Cup, which is a pauper format style specialist tourney, which she is hosting on the 30th of this month. And if you're a member of her community, you can head over there for details on how to sign up and enter in that tournament. I know I'm entering it, and I was really intrigued by the pauper format, which is no epics and no legendaries are allowed, which is really cool and really limiting. And that's why I was saying when I was talking about that mid-range 100, because of how cheap 100 decks are, is going to be all over that thing, but it's still going to be a fun tournament to play in. So, and then I know that in celebration of my community hitting 500 followers, I'm also going to be having a specialist style tournament that I'm going to announce the details on next week. So keep your eyes tuned for that. And then Eric, you had one as well you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, just again, we're always going to make it a point to shout out a fellow member in the podcast community, but also the individual members of that podcast are I like to think we're all on very good terms with and consider friends.
Absolutely.
Hearthbuzz, which has Runny Said, Don, aka Dragon Rider DK, and Audrey Kills. They're doing their own community tournament right now, actually, and I'm participating. Tomorrow is going to be my first match ever doing a specialist format, which I'm really excited for, with Q Block, which I'll follow up and chat on moment on. I'm doing it tomorrow and then Friday night, and I'm really looking forward to it. I think it'll be a lot of fun. And they also broadcast their matches. So if you go on over to their channel, it's just the word Hearth, as in Hearthstone, and then Buzz is in a B. All one word. You can follow them. And on Sundays at I want to say 3 p.m. Pacific time, but go check out their social media to verify. You can watch them actually cast the games as well while they're happening in the happening live. So yeah, super excited about that, and definitely worth supporting either way.
100%.
So yeah. And then I feel like a good segue with the Q Block to transition over to Two Battles question.
Absolutely.
Which Two Battle, great question about how to tweak Q Block currently. The biggest thing, Exiles has already mentioned this once in the stream, but Cheaty Ankle Biter in general for Warlock is the nuts. It is such a perfect card considering the amount of applications that you can use it in. You can buff up your spellstone, you can set up defile, you can get rid of annoying divine shields if you want, you can push for lethal, you can do a lot of really, really strong things that it just fits so well into the deck that you don't need a lot of the other cards that you were using before. So if you're not already running Cheaty Ankle Biter, I would say that's really the biggest note I can make. Otherwise, the list now has been pretty set for a while. If you want to know some text that I made for my specialist format, though, let me pull those up really quickly. The first thing for my secondary deck, I do run Nerubian Unravel. Did this. I can look to give credit while we have downtime. But I pulled this from someone who absolutely crushed their qualifier, and then someone else who was part of their community mentioned that they did the same thing with it. It runs pretty much everything else. It takes out a Cheaty Ankle Biter to put him in. So I'm curious to see how well that'll work, but that's to play around the Priest. Against Priest, you don't really need the Cheaty as much, considering they're mostly going to be playing the long game. So when you hit that mid game, you want to get those Nerubian Ravelers online and push it over the edge before they can come back. And then the final note for the tertiary, this deck doesn't run Doom Guards. And this deck is mostly to combat the mid-range hunter. It doesn't run Doom Guards. It actually doesn't run Mountain Giants either.
Really?
It takes out the Prince Tal'Darim as well. You tech in Tark Reapers, a Shadow Bolt, which I'm curious to, some of these are just like, let's just play around with it, whatever. A Shadow Bolt as well. 2 Doomsayers, and those seem like the main changes that are noteworthy. So yeah, it's interesting to see. There's a couple other little tweaks there. If you want, we can talk in DMs, and I'd be happy to share these lists with you. Because if anything, it's just a fun way to play Q Block with some different cards than usual.
Okay.
But yeah, I would say, again, I've got a 69% win rate with Q Block, and the only reason I mention that is because I feel like I've got a pretty good grasp on how these techs should work out. But and like I could always, if you have any questions, help advise if needed. So yeah, those are my thoughts.
Well put, Eric.
Thank you.
I think this is probably the last question because it looks like a long one. Jolt Metal Josh asks, one thing I noticed you guys talked about was all of the odd even decks, as well as the decks where the main cards used will be rotated. As far as I know, I wouldn't worry too bad about the meta based off those statistics right now. Obviously, mid-range hunter would be will pretty much dominate at the beginning because of how easy it is just to use about any cards. But wouldn't it be better to speculate with the meta decks right now, as of right now before the rotation, rather than the top decks? Eric X, any thoughts on that?
I don't understand the question. Okay.
I believe he's asking about us speculating about what the meta is about what the specialist tournament is going to look like with the changes that are coming versus now. And I think he's referring to the fact that maybe, at least I felt that he was referring to when I was talking about how I was worried that the specialist format is going to be dominated by 2 or 3 different deck types.
So if we look at Magic the Gathering, we're gonna pull it right back over to that because it's the same thing, like the sideboarded format, right? Because you have a sideboard plan when you're going into a Magic tournament. You're like, if I run into this deck, I'm going to tech in these 4 cards. This deck, these 10. Whatever. You have your plan, and a lot of people keep it written down in their journal that they're allowed to look at between games. So instead, you just do all of this prep work beforehand. Now, in these tournaments, there's very old formats. There's modern. Which is actually, we'll talk about modern because the other ones just start to get crazy. Where modern is like approximately 3 years, I think, 3 to 5 years Magic cards, very few bans, very few. And as it works out, there is a rotating set of tier 1 and tier 2 decks because it's a tournament meta. And so you have to make a meta call based on what's the most popular right now, on the kitchen table, what's the most popular at our Friday night Magic at game stores, and what's the most powerful? What does the most broken things? And am I going to bring the most powerful deck? Am I going to bring a deck that beats the most powerful deck? Am I going to bring a deck that beats the deck that beats the most powerful deck? Because that's what I'm expecting. I'm serious. These are exact that you consider.
Absolutely.
On top of, well, what if I just bring something no one knows how to play against?
Yahtzee.
So I would never think that unless something completely busted happens, for example, Baku again, that we would run into a place where the tournament meta will be stale in the specialist format. Right now, even the top three classes are Hunter, Warlock, and then Priest, followed up by Paladin. And the mid-range hunters aren't getting very far. Death Rattle Hunter is doing a lot better than mid-range hunter is, and that's what everyone keeps talking about is the mid-range, So,
well, this is interesting timing. We just got rated right at the end of our podcast with 159 people from the one, the only, the legend himself, Mr. Regis Kilbin. Mr. Regis Kilbin, thank you so much for the raid. Hello, everyone from Regis Kilbin's stream. I appreciate you joining us. Unfortunately, it is at the tail end of our little podcast here, The Orbit. But it's so nice to have you here. Holy crap, that's incredible, and that's a big number to read on the screen. So, X, I think you put that once again in excellent perspective, and I appreciate your insight on that. The only thing I wanted to add to that was to Josh's comment about, or in response to Josh's question, was that I think when it comes to theory crafting and discussing theory crafting in general, that it's not so much about the cards that you're talking about, but the mechanics and the thoughts behind those things. You can talk about, we could theory craft about any cards in any format as long as we're talking about why we're making those choices and how those choices affect the gameplay. So getting stuck on the particular cards or meta decisions that we're talking about is less important than understanding the thought process and the mechanics behind what we're discussing. So would be my only comments to add to what Exile so eloquently outlined right there. Is there anything else you guys want to talk about before we tie things up here a little bit?
Well, I figured just because we had a bunch of people just join.
Sure.
We're in the middle of just a Q&A section towards the end of our podcast. And so if anyone here has any questions about either, we've gone over the rotation, what we think about like the teaser that's been announced for everything, what we think about, the cards leaving, what's to expect in the upcoming expansion as far as, the changes that they've at least let us know about. And then now we're just wrapping up kind of conversation about the whole specialist format, the Masters qualifiers, everything. If anyone has any questions about any of those, please feel free to share any. We'd be more than happy to help answer.
Excellent. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We also talked about the AMA that was recently discussed, or recently happened, where the developers discussed a lot of the changes that were coming up, their thoughts behind it, and things that they had planned for the future as well. We covered quite a bit in the last hour and a half. So if you guys do want to chip in, we are more than willing to stick around and answer some of those questions for sure.
So the least impactful quest, Mr. Erling LOL, as he asks, was unfortunately the Shaman quest. I played it so many times after Shutterwalk was released, and even with Shutterwalk, Megafin wasn't good enough, so... Well, no, I guess that makes it the most impactful, but not impactful from a competitive standpoint, more impactful on my heart and how it broke it so many times.
It's fair. Very fair. I would argue, because I want to cheat again just so I can reference this one more time, and it's not an actual quest, but I think when you get gold for playing Hearthstone on a Samsung Galaxy S6 might be the most limiting achievement that you can get in the game.
Yeah.
If you have a Samsung Galaxy S6, not an ad, please go open up Hearthstone on it and play one game, and you'll get a reward.
Find a friend, log in on their phone.
Yeah, just go to your local carrier and just say, "Hey, I just need to take this for 1 second. I'll be right back." And then I'm pretty sure there's people with pretty open policies,
right,
wherever you're based. Anything on your end?
Ballsy asked a question as well. He says, thoughts on the best AoEs leaving the game. He mentions Vanish and Scream. Do you want things like that in the future? Vanish is a classic card, so it's not It's not going anywhere. But Scream is leaving. Generally speaking, I think board clear removal is absolutely imperative in a card game, because otherwise you don't have a way to empower control decks to exist. In other words, all you'll see is a meta filled with aggro and maybe a little bit of mid-range decks, but you have no way to reward the control decks for playing a control deck, because the whole idea behind that is, you wait until the turn where you can get all this value, clear the board, and now you can set up to do the big thing that you want to do to win the game. So I think that they need to be in there. They just have to be done right. Priest has seen quite a bit of very, very powerful board clears the last few years. I mean, I loved Light Bomb. I loved, Psychic Scream was great for counteracting super hyper aggro, if you could survive to turn 7. And Mass Hysteria is, I'm on the fence with Mass Hysteria because of its randomness, but it's still another powerful board clear that they have. So I think that they're imperative to keep A, aggro decks in check, and B, to enable there to be some elements of control play. You guys have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. Don't put it back in my deck. I'm serious. Put it in my hand, put it in the graveyard. Don't put it back in my deck, because it's very unrewarding for the player who's playing to the outs that are in their deck. Like, True. If I'm playing even lock and I'm tapping aggressively every turn because I know I need to drop Gul'dan on 10 to win the game, which you don't against Priest. But for example, then you Psychic Scream 5 cards back in my deck. Well, 5 more times I need to tap to find Gul'dan. It's like, it feels very unrewarding because you're trying to accomplish your plan, and not only does it screw it up by completely destroying your board presence, but it also completely destroys your deck.
It's a double punish.
Yeah, so it's a very powerful card. Twisting Nether is 8 mana and is a third of the power.
Yes.
So,
and I agree. That's an excellent point to make. Yeah, excellent point to make. I would want to emphasize that I agree with what X is saying. I do think that the board clears have to be done right, but they're absolutely imperative to be in the game if you want to see any kind of diversity in the meta.
Yeah, and then real quick on my end, I think, because I think you were kind of mentioning here, I'm going to go back really quickly. Leaving the game, do you want things like that in the future? So if you're even asking specifically like those kind of board effects where it removes things from the board and then either puts them in a hand or takes them off, I think they went over that pretty well. I think Priest will be getting another kind of removal of some kind, because just Mass Hysteria is going to be tough to commit to. The same way I think Mage is going to get some additional kind of board clear. I know they just got Blast Wave, but with Dragon's Fury rotating, that's such a hard hit. Dragon's Fury has been the core of a control Mage deck since it's existed. So it'll be, like everyone else had said, they're definitely going to be generating new removal spells, but I think they're going to be generating just the same power level cards, honestly. And unless it gets to a situation where control really overpowers the meta, I don't know. I think you can expect to see similar power level cards in the game going forward. And I did want to ask or bring up one thing, because it was right before Ballsy, so I want to make sure Game Lair Tim made sure that we saw their question. But they said, what do you feel is the most questionable recent change, the one that makes you the most nervous?
We actually talked about this a little bit.
Yeah.
We actually talked about this a little bit.
If you want to know the answer to that, you could always go back and watch the podcast, EternalOrbit.gg, as soon as we start hosting it again on our website.
Well done, sir.
Little plug.
Well done. Do either of you have an answer off the top of your head for this one? If we're talking about the recent changes as far as the nerfs versus the rotation, I think is an important distinction to make. I get the impression he's talking about the recent nerfs. Is that what you guys are reading here too? Unless you can clarify otherwise.
Yeah, I read it that way, to be honest.
Okay. My biggest issue with that is it came too little, too late. At that point they might as well just waited for the rotation. But they're talking about being more aggressive in the future, which makes me happy. So,
yeah. And yeah, just to keep it trim, they've done a very good job with the recent changes. I truly think there's been things where they could have done more, but the fact that they just were able to not only react so quickly, but be so transparent with it and kind of make these changes so quick after they're announced. Like, that's all very promising, I think, from anyone who's been playing Hearthstone for, if you've played Hearthstone even a year before they started this big trend in the past 4 months, you would be able to tell it's night and day the way that they address them. So honestly, I think it's much more promising than anything. The concerns, I don't know. They could always do more, but at this point, the fact that it's almost like you've seen nothing for the longest time, that seeing something happen is in the manner that they've done it is like, you feel you're greedy asking for more,
Yeah, and you bring up an interesting point there, though. I think it's if we're going to be doing the game a favor, we need to be critical of something that we enjoy to make sure that it maintains the level of joy that we feel for it. And so I think I don't want it to be a situation of where we look at this and go, hey, I'm just glad they're doing something, so I don't want to complain. It's like one of those things. Well, hey, you know what? They only whipped us with 6 slashes today instead of 8, so that's an improvement. That is a dramatic example, but I think you get what I'm saying here. Like I said, it was too little, too late. Like even after that, there were cards that still needed to be addressed, like Naturalize. Well, if you did all these other nerfs, why didn't you just take care of Naturalize right then and there? Why did you wait for Naturalize to allow a deck that is pervasive and oppressive to just continue for a few more weeks when you literally just did a nerf? And so people are like, well, why didn't that card go then? Why do we got to wait 6 more weeks? That would be one of the things that I would hope that they don't do in the future, and just say, well, we're going to nerf some. We know these other ones need to be nerfed, but we're going to wait another month and tell you we're going to wait another month to do it. That to me is just, I hope that they shy away from that in the future. So,
yeah, I think we're good. What, one question left?
Yeah,
you good with that?
I think we're good with that. Yep. Let's do one last one.
So here, well, actually, I mean, Lobster asked the question about Wild, which we don't spend much time doing.
Sure, if you want to address a Wild question, let's do that.
Oh boy!
For our last question, we might as well show a little love to the Wild format.
That's tough. Do you think you'd be able to provide the insight required for a question, like whether
Absolutely.
or not? Yeah. Okay. So Lobster asks, Lobster, good friend of the stream. How do you think Wild is going to end up with odd and even plus the new expansion?
So obviously, we don't know any of the new expansion cards yet. So what you are asking is, what is Blizzard going to do for Wild moving forward? And the answer is the same thing that they've done for it the past couple of years. Nothing. They're going to use it as their dumping ground for especially overpowered cards and never attempt to fix it. They've shown this time and time again. And every time you think they're going to do something for Wild, they rescind that idea. So here we are.
Yep.
Sorry, Lobster.
Aviana.
Not the answer you wanted, but it is what it is. We can't go away from the truth.
Wild is going to see, until they address fundamentally what Gen and Baku enable. Wild is going to see Gen and Baku decks for time immemorial, because it's just too powerful of a mechanic to try to not work. We talked about this last week when we were talking about the nerfs leaving. If you have a deck that has any chance of being made into a Gen or Baku deck, people who are going to design those decks are first going to try to make it work in that way first, because it's so powerful. And only if they can't get it to work optimally in that way, then they'll make it without either Gen or Baku. So until they address what they empower, you're going to see those decks forever in Wild, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I'm right there with them. They've shown nerfs here and there to cards that were too pervasive in Wild, and so there's some precedent for it, but I think Blizzard already has mentioned how comfortable they are with the fact that Wild is in its position to sort of live up to its namesake. And it's sort of this Wild West of just like anything goes. And so again, I think they're both my ghosts are completely right. They would have to very, I don't know. They'd have to overhaul the format in a very big way. That doesn't seem like there's a sense of urgency for on Blizzard's end. So expect to keep seeing Odd Paladin.
Yes.
Expect to keep seeing pretty much any odd even. Yeah, exactly. Shaman. It's just all gonna be there. And if anything, you can look forward to the fact that maybe they'll get to sprinkle in a couple other cards to keep it exciting.
Right.
But as we know, with the power level changes that they've tried to address, who knows how many will be as good as cards that already exist. So it'll be interesting, but Best of luck to the wild players.
Yeah, I mean, I hate playing against them in standard anymore. I can't even imagine when you got some of the traditionally super powerful cards to contend with in there as well. Like, yeah, we could talk about this.
Not gonna lie.
What?
Not gonna lie. Gen and Baku are fine in Wild because you have to compare them to Barnes. Barnes is the biggest issue in Wild.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Until they touch Barnes, I don't even want to talk about Wild.
So somebody's going to make a Barnes Ysarge even deck. I don't even know if that's
Warcraft.
good.
You know how to say Yasharaj.
Ysarge. Yeah.
Oh boy. But yeah, I think that's the best perspective we can
I was
put.
kidding, Captain. All right. Well, I think that about does it. We gave you about 20 minutes more show than we were planning on today, but we didn't want to alienate all of the kind raiders that came in. Hopefully, those of you that joined us from Regis' stream, and again, thank you so much, Mr. Kilbin, for the kind raid. We are all huge fans of you here,
Yes.
and I've been a member of your community and enjoy your community as well. So thank you so much for that. And thank you again, everyone from that stream, for joining us as well. We do this every Wednesday at 9 o'clock Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. So I hope that you guys will come back and give us a shot next week on our next episode. But we thank you for being here in the meantime. We did cover a lot of topics today. We talked about the Dev AMA. We talked about the changes to the competitive format and the introduction of the specialist deck style. And we had a nice little discussion with you guys at the end. And I think we covered a lot of ground today, guys. So I think with that, I think it's a good time to call it a night. So once again, everyone, thank you for being here. My name is Azrael as it gets. And I hope to see you guys again in the future. Have a good night. Eric and X, if you'd like to say anything.
Buy the merch. Buy the merch. We do this because we're part of an organization called Eternal Orbit with 3 other members. And you can get cool merch if you go to our website, eternalorbit.gg. Very sincerely, thank you everyone for your time tonight. This is our second episode. We've been having a lot of fun and a lot of excitement doing it. You should see us in the Discord call before the stream starts. But it's very cool, and the amount of support we receive has been awesome. So we just appreciate all of that. Thank you very sincerely.
All right. X, have a good night. Eric, have a good night. Yeah. Goodbye, everyone. Thanks for being here. See you next week. Goodbye.
Okay. The Orbit.